Hi guys, it's the 5th anniversary of Brexit, and while the number of people who thought it was a good idea continues to drop, there are of course calls not just for the UK to have a better relationship with the EU, but also to rejoin. Here the business tycoon Alan Sugar called the UK's exit from the European Union the biggest disaster in his lifetime. He then called on the government to ask to rejoin, even if it meant on bended knee. Is he right?
The other big topic around this week is growth and how we get the UK economy and businesses growing.
The biggest disaster in my lifetime was us leaving the European Union. It is now the full ramifications of us not being in the European Union is starting to really take its toll. But if I was the Prime Minister, I would be coming along on my bended knees and asking to be allowed back in. It's all to do with trade, free trade. Small people, small traders can't ship goods abroad now. It's very complicated. It's a terrible situation, a real terrible situation. How do we get out of it? My honest opinion, get back in the EU.
And he's right. Get back into the EU. Get back into the single market and the customs union. This would undo the damage of Brexit. And I keep saying Brexit will not be done until the UK rejoins. Now, what we're seeing from the Labour government is a sort of an attempt to put out some feelers to the EU, rebuild some of the trust that of course was lost during the time of Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, and to a lesser extent Rishi Sunak. But try and rebuild some of that trust. Reaccess certain programs that the UK was expelled from or decided to expel itself from. So while it's painfully slow and the rhetoric is not something that we want to hear, there is movement, some movement taking place behind closed doors or on the back burner. Now, when it comes to rejoining, well, I think the British government will have to be frank about this. They will have to be, and I really don't understand why they're not pointing the finger of blame at Brexit. You know, the Chancellor is talking about growing the economy, but she won't mention Brexit. She could say, look, we would like to do X, Y, and Z, but we can't because of Brexit. It would be a legitimate scapegoat if such a thing exists. But the UK government could say, look, we would like to do X, Y, and Z, but we can't because of Brexit. Do you want, a fully funded NHS? Do you want a fully staffed NHS? Do you want all of the good things we had before we left? Well, if you do, then you have to support us in rejoining. We have to start that campaign now. Now, it's important to remember there are two sides to this. There's the UK side and there's the EU side. On the UK side, there needs to be consensus in Parliament. I keep saying this. There's no point Labour and a majority of Labour members and MPs supporting the idea of rejoining the European Union, and maybe the Liberal Democrats and the SNP and maybe the Greens. You need consensus also within the Conservative Party. Reform UK, you can forget about them. They don't support the idea of rejoining. But you need to have a pretty good consensus in Parliament, because the European Union, on the other side, is not going to entertain the idea of the UK planning to rejoin and then pulling the plug after a few years. And then after another few years, planning to rejoin again and then pulling the plug when the Conservatives or Reform or whoever gets into power. It doesn't want that. It needs to have consensus in Parliament. The public need to be fully behind it. Politicians need to be fully behind it. A majority of politicians. If you don't have that, then the European Union is not going to entertain the idea. I keep bringing up this point that many others don't. When the UK was a member of the European Union, it wasn't an enthusiastic pro-European country. We had the referendum where you had Brexiteers on one side and you had Remainers on the other side. But the Remainers, for the most part, were not pro-European. They were talking about, well, it's better to stay in than to leave. And this is part of the problem. See, the European Union want members to join or to rejoin, but they want them to be pro-European members. They don't want people creating problems. They don't want people who are approaching the European Union as a necessary evil. And unfortunately, this is something that exists within British politics. I don't believe it exists within British society, but the politicians have this mindset, and that has to change. So it's not just about convincing people Brexit is a disaster, we need to undo that, that we truly need to see a pro-European message and vision within British politics. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. The UK will not join or rejoin the European Union. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.